Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with Duty Ron and Ed Wallace. You know the drill. We're retired New York City police detectives and 9/11 World Trade Center first responders. If you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, you're in the right spot. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll get all things Duty Ron and this guy over here, my partner in crime, Ed Wallace, when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, Nancy Guthrie, the investigation, day 50. It's going past day 50, folks. We have a special guest who's going to be joining us, Sergeant Aaron Cross. You know him from the last time we went live. He is the president of the union that represents all of the deputies in Pima County. Ed, your thoughts on our guest? I know you're chomping at the bit. You're ready to go. We got a lot of questions for Sergeant Cross.
Yeah, I know. I missed him the last time he was here, and so I'm happy to be here now to finally meet him. And you know, his name is one of my favorite crime novel characters, almost like Alex Cross. And then we got Aaron Cross, okay, Detective Alex Cross. If you guys know the series and the movies, and you know about that character, so yeah, I'm very excited.
Let's play a little clip for our audience real quick. This is just a little bit of a setup because we're going to talk about the recall of Sheriff Nanos. That's in motion right now. And it's not a matter of if they will get those signatures. They will. They will get those signatures. So let's listen to a little bit of local coverage. I always like to go to the locals. Sometimes I like to go beyond the locals, but I like this station and I like what they have to say. So let's take a listen and we'll have our guests join us right after this.
Recall Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos is underway in Pima County.
Now, Nanos, who's been serving a second term as sheriff for more than 5 years, he's also now become the face of the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
And so our News 4 Tucson's Jacob Owens is live outside PCSD headquarters with more on the effort. Jacob, to oust him, what's behind the effort?
Now, Monica, I spoke directly to the person behind it. We'll show you that individual in a moment. But first, this is a petition to recall Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. This petition is arguing that a change in leadership is needed to bring back confidence in the sheriff's office. And now to who's behind this. That is former Republican congressional candidate Daniel Gutierrez. He's behind this push to recall Nanos. Gutierrez says the biggest reason he is pushing for the recall is Nanos' handling of the Guthrie case. He also cites recent reporting on inaccuracies on Nanos' resume.
I believe he's in a position that he's not qualified to be in, and he's shown us that through the Guthrie case.
Nanos says in a statement, we're aware of the recall and it's the right of the people. We'll always honor the will of the people, and that's what makes democracy. So Monica, Sean, the next step in this possible recall is gathering signatures. The deadline for those behind it, like Gutierrez, to do so is July 10th. That number they're trying to hit of valid signatures by July 10th is over 122,000. To be exact, that's 122 and 211,000 valid signatures to advance this recall effort. Reporting live on the South Side.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The push is on, and I'm hoping and I'm praying and I know that they'll get them. Without further ado, I want to introduce, you guys know him, you love him. The chat is going wild over Sergeant Aaron Cross, Pima County Sergeant. Thank you, Sarge, for joining us tonight.
Glad to be with you guys.
Yeah. Last time we got together, Sarge, we had an in-depth conversation on Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. The missteps that were happening and continue to happen affects not only the community, but I feel like it affects your membership, the members the men and women who do the job day in and day out, and that are out there putting their lives on the line for the community. This guy's giving them a bad name. And your thoughts before we get into this recall on where we're at in this investigation on day 50 for Nancy Guthrie?
Yeah, the investigation, it's as you well know, is in the hands of the task force. So since it's kind of moved out of our building into the FBI building here in Tucson, the information that's kind of gotten to the rest of the department is is even less. So really what they're doing over there is a well-kept secret. And I'm sure if they get a big break in the case that we'll start hearing about it. I spoke with Miss Ashley Banfield the other night and told her that, yeah, when stuff starts kicking off on a big case, usually word gets around because they start needing different assets from different areas of the department. So hopefully we're hoping we get those calls any day, that the SWAT team starts getting texts to get ready. Patrol starts getting some notifications that they need to go help out and be uniform support, hopefully for a search warrant or something. But we're just on standby and hoping that that the task force is able to try and run this guy down. And hopefully we find Miss Guthrie and some answers for the family.
And I wanted to ask you quickly, Aaron, is that task force still, I think, 5, you said, and 1, or is it 4 and 1 from Pima? And then how many of FBI agents are assigned?
Yeah, from us, it's 4 or 5 detectives and a sergeant. How many FBI guys is totally unknown. I couldn't tell you how many of their agents are tasked with that as well.
It looks like we have a 6th member joining us here in the live chat. Ed, what do you got going on there?
Well, after that last news clip you played, I had to put my hat on. I mean, got a cowboy up here.
Ed, we found out, and I knew this early on, that you did some training at the Pima County, in Pima County. Could you want to tell the audience a little bit of what you did there in Pima?
Oh yeah. Folks throughout the nation in many smaller jurisdictions, the elected sheriff is also the elected coroner. But that's not the case in Pima County. Pima County has its own. Pima County has its own forensic science center, medical examiner's office. Okay, and when I was at the New York City medical examiner's office as the director of forensic training, I trained up a bunch of the Pima County people, and so they gave me.
Got to go full screen with that.
Yeah, so they gave me this mug, Pima County, and then with my name on the back, as a gift for training them up. Could
we raffle that off tonight to help with the effort to recall Sheriff Nanos?
Sure. If you get the 120,000 signatures, okay, we'll raffle this off.
Love it,
Sarge. I have 2 sheets, 2 full reporters' notes of questions from our audience. So in the last 15 minutes or so, if you don't mind, I know you're a good sport. We'd like to pepper you with some of these questions. We'll do it quickly. So if you don't mind, we would love to do that because our audience, second to none, these guys and girls are following all of these cases so closely, but this one in particular, Sheriff Nanos, we're into day 50, and the yo-yo effect and all of the things that has happened and haven't happened in this case are concerning to guys like myself and Ed, who spent many decades in public service, just like you are. You're 26 years, and I know that the grand plan, according to your boss, is 28. And you're gonna, be pulling the plug, right? Or has that changed? What's going on?
Well, no, it hasn't changed.
The chat said they'll donate if I keep the hat on.
It's hard for me to concentrate that on, but you do what you want. You do what you want. So many people have a lot of questions. And one of the real big ones, and I'm not gonna go down all of the user, our members' questions real quick. But one of them I have for you is quickly right back to the beginning with releasing that crime scene. That was a big bugaboo for Ed and for many people in the forensic community, and he was questioned on it. And he said, and I said this the last time we got together, he said, I am directed by my crime scene folks. And if they tell me that I could release the scene, I'm going to release it. So he basically said, it wasn't me, it was them. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I've mentioned before, if you follow the sheriff any length of time, the the credit always goes to him and the blame always falls somewhere else. And this is an instance that I can tell the listening audience that the decision to give up that crime scene was from command, and the investigators were pressured throughout to wrap up. Like, okay, what are we doing? Let's wrap it up. Let's give this thing back. That was not the investigators' call. That was not their decision, and it's unfortunate that they just won't take credit for their decision making to give it up, to let it go back to the family. And we discussed how completely unnecessary it was. There was no one else living in the home. It would not have hurt, because this was such a, I understand we didn't have the benefit of the video that first week, I believe, until the FBI found it. And so even then, it was still a weird situation with that type, that woman in that age group going missing, and we didn't know exactly what time, but from what the family was describing, they dropped her off late the night before, and she didn't show up, I think, to a friend's house to go to attend a church, like Zoom meeting, a church service. So there's a pretty big time window, but it seemed to be overnight. And then you have the blood droplets, at least outside the house. I don't know what the scene looked like inside, but it was still weird. And if no one else is living there, what harm would it have caused to leave that scene locked down and post security and have a crime scene log going, just in case? And I'm certain that when that video came out of the perpetrator stalking up the steps, and we kind of had a better sense of what exactly took place, I'm certain that they wish they kept that crime scene locked down. It really defies reason and logic as to why they gave it up.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the investigator's fault.
I 100% agree with you. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, and then have to deal with the consequences of releasing it early. It's not as if you were, a victim was staying in a hotel someplace being displaced. There was nobody living there but her. So what is the urgency to give up the crime scene and give it back? Because as we all know in life, in investigations as well, things change over time. New information comes in, and now you may have to go back out to that scene and relook at something. But now the scene is compromised because you gave it back too early and you allowed family members and other people entry into that location. So yeah, that was an unforced error on their part.
Yeah. And you get one shot at a pristine crime scene, like I've been saying. It's such a shame. I hope that they processed it well the initial time. I can't describe what that was because I wasn't there. But it obviously would have been beneficial to keep that thing locked down, because clearly we had to go back out there repeatedly that first week. Everybody saw that. So it's not like we were done with it and never came back, and we can make that claim that, yeah, we're done. We didn't need it anymore. So it's okay to give it back. But when you give it back, initially tell the public that we shouldn't have released it so soon, then change your mind that we didn't need it anymore. But then you're continually sending investigators back out there throughout the week. It's not a great look for our agency, unfortunately.
Sarge, if I may ask, how big is your crime scene unit?
I don't know the precise number, but it's I would wager that it's probably around 10.
And are they dedicated crime scene investigators 24/7, 365?
Yes, for the most part. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And are they sworn or civilian?
Civilian.
Okay. Yeah. That's a model that we don't have back here in the Northeast, but many jurisdictions have civilian crime scene investigators that have degrees in forensics from college and so forth. I find them a pleasure to train when I'm training crime scene investigators. I find them to be much more receptive to the trainings than on the non-sworn in many cases. That said, did they have 3D laser scanners?
I believe they do.
Great.
I believe they do. Mm-hmm. Whether they were used, I'm unsure.
Oh, okay. I didn't
see we didn't see any of the tripods set up outside that we traditionally would see with a Faro 3D laser scanner or any type of 3D laser scanner. But if they were inside the house, we would hope and pray that they did a 3D laser scanner inside the house. There was people like saying, "Oh, did she have a dog? Did she not have a dog?" This is all folks who are following this case. I don't feel like that is information as far as like what the sheriff would put out at a press conference would be would be particularly helpful in the case. This would be something that investigators would want to know. But there's a lot of stuff, and people have to understand there's a lot of stuff that they know that's happening that they can't release because only the bad guys know and the perp. I mean, and the investigators. So it gets people crazy that they don't release everything, and you can't just open up your case file and show the public. But there's a public information officer assigned to Pima County Sheriff's. I looked at that, right? So there's a public information officer. Why the hell isn't he or she giving timely press release? This is day 50, and we have just crickets. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not. I don't think it's helpful to the case because you want public eyes continually looking at this. Now, of course, public interest is going to wane. There's always going to be new things to get their attention. But you shouldn't hasten that. And by just shutting off communication or leaving it to just a few one-on-ones with some local friendly media, is just going to drive the people that are still paying attention to the case crazy a little because they're not getting any information. But also the general public will just their interest will just move on to something else. So I would prefer, and most of my members, the ones that I've spoken with about this topic, would prefer that we gave at least some regular updates in a professional press conference setting. It doesn't necessarily need to be helmed by the sheriff. It could be helmed by someone that's more familiar with the case, a PIO, anyone, something to continually give out little updates as to what's going on with the case that we can release to the public, just to keep that interest. But this current situation is so bizarre. I don't know of any other agency that's handled a major incident like this in this manner. It's just very strange, and I think a lot of it had to do with the beating he took the first week on social media and
after that first press conference
about his performance. Yeah. I mean, it's not a good look when you just wing it and can't silence your phone. It's not a great look.
When I watched that press conference, Sarge, I said, "Oh boy, he better put some Kevlar on because it's coming his way." Right after he did that, I said, "Can I ask a couple more questions about the crime scene investigators and
Sure.
how you guys operate? Are the crime scene investigators like independent from the detectives or the investigators, meaning that they process the crime scene based upon their training, knowledge, and experience, or do the detectives kind of guide them? I want you to do this. I want you to do that. I want you to do this.
Great question.
A little bit of both, in my experience.
Okay.
They will come in and do kind of the generic stuff that they do at every scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then the detectives that's in charge of the case, they'll kind of walk them through specifically. I remember speaking with a great retired homicide detective, and they described the scene where this kid was I think he was either stabbed or shot in the leg, and he crawled through the desert and tried to make it to the road to rescue himself before he bled out. And he guided them got a boom truck to get to the top. This was obviously many years ago, to take pictures of his effort to save his own life.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
she was kind of steering that. Their picture taking, that's something that wouldn't regularly occur to them, but because that investigator had the benefit of trial, they knew that would be powerful to show the jury, and they described that it was, when it went to trial, very
Mm-hmm.
powerful. So yeah, they take their cues from detectives as they're working it, and they do a little A and B combined.
Okay. Sounds good.
Hey, I got another question, but before I ask you this one, I want to just look at the chat here, and I want to acknowledge the chat. Lots of people in there. There's 1,200 and swelling of live viewers on this chat. I just want you guys to know that Sergeant Cross was kind enough to say to us, I asked him quickly in the green room before we went live, would you mind taking questions from our live audience, because they've got questions for you? And he was just like, yeah, let's do it. So just everybody in the chat, in the last 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, I will do hashtag Sergeant, just a quick hashtag Sergeant, SGT. And then you can pepper us with those questions in the live chat, and he will be happy to answer. I asked him before we went, is there any areas that you don't want to go? And he goes, nope, I'll go everywhere, whatever you need. So I appreciate that so much, because we always run into situations where, active members of certain departments, if they're not in the position that you're in, and being the union president puts you in a great position to, speak openly on what you know. And really, as it pertains to this case, it's crickets with this guy here. I'm going to show him on the screen. With this guy, we got crickets. This guy is like nothing. You said it so well. This is like nothing Ed and I have seen before. And we've been covering cases since 2019. Ed's been with me since 2021, but we have, 30 plus years, 35 years in law enforcement. And I've never seen anything like it. So it's just bizarre beyond belief. And, with such a high profile case with Savannah Guthrie being a media sensation, she's on the morning show here in New York. And, that's a, nationally syndicated show. That's why you have the media swarming all over it. And he couldn't have been not privy to that. He had to have known. And people ask the question, Aaron, do you mind if I call you by your first name, right, Sarge? So Aaron, people ask this question, like, is Sheriff Nanos so out of touch with his community? The Catalina foothills is filled with sprawling estates, beautiful homes. We see it because there's drones. Well, there were drones all over the place there. And those people are probably like, what the hell is this? But drones have shown us the beautiful landscape and the beautiful Catalina foothills. Are we to believe that Sheriff Nanos, here pictured on the screen, did not know that Nancy Guthrie, the daughter, the mother of Savannah Guthrie, resided at that location? Or am I like, what's going on here?
Yeah, that's really difficult to say. When we run across VIPs, so to speak, obviously the commanders like to know about that stuff. If she kept her head down, never needed the sheriff's department response for anything before. I'm not familiar with all the incidents we've been out at Miss Guthrie's house. I can't imagine it's very many. But yeah, if she didn't need anything or wasn't calling in any favors, it's entirely possible he didn't know. It really is. I just call balls and strikes. It's possible.
Ed, you gotta love when you hear that from Sergeant Aaron Cross. We say that all the time. We call
That's right. That's all we do here is call balls and strikes.
Another real sticking point for us, because we are the law enforcement liaison for EquiSearch, the search and rescue group out of Texas. They've been around for a long time. If you live in the South, you know EquiSearch, the United Cajun Navy, professional search group. I don't know much about them, but I know they have a history of helping law enforcement with a $0 bill on the table. These are professional searchers. EquiSearch Midwest were on standby. They were ready with drones, horseback, boats, sonar, drones that can detect any type of ground disturbances if she, God forbid, was buried somewhere in the desert. They were denied by this man. Sheriff Nanos told them, I don't know if it was him direct, but I got the word because I said, you want me to call over there? And they're like, no. He told Tim Miller, no, we don't need you. Why? Why would you turn down free searching services? Assign one detective or one deputy to go out with these groups once, during the day and let them cover a wide amount of ground. Why? Why would they say no to that?
It defies logic. And Miss Guthrie's case aside, let's pretend that it never happened. I would want these search groups, if they're willing to volunteer their time, I would like them to comb the west side of Pima County regardless. There are unsolved crimes out in that desert. And so even if their efforts didn't result in anything beneficial to the Guthrie case. There would likely be other crimes that that could potentially be solved by their efforts. So I would want them, even if this never happened to Miss Guthrie, to go out and look in the desert. So I can't explain it. I don't know, other than my suspicions is that he likes to control things. And if there are groups out there that are perceived to be kind of working on their own or self-deploying, that might make him uneasy. It's the only thing I can come up with. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because these are trained professionals and they come with a lot of high-tech gear, and they've helped a lot of cases. And in addition, I just don't understand, because as you said, I could tell you how many times people went out looking for one victim and ended up finding other victims during the course of their search.
Yep.
You saw it with Suzanne Morphew, Ed. Remember, they found bones of another woman who was missing for X amount of period of time, and then they also found Suzanne Morphew's remains at the same time. And they, like you say, you know, the desert is a big, vast place where people like to dump things. You know, sometimes it's garbage, sometimes it's blue and black nitro gloves. You know, so lots of stuff gets dumped in the desert, including human remains.
Yeah, we also have UDAs. I'm sorry, Ron, I didn't mean to cut you off. We also have UDAs that perish out in the desert too, and we have some groups that go out and try and find those remains, and they always call us, and then we have to go out and recover them. So, there are probably a fair amount of human remains out there that have just yet to be recovered. So, I didn't see any harm in what they were offering.
When I did the training that I was talking to you about with the Pima County folks in the medical examiner's office, plus some of the other border counties, they talked about the UDAs all the time. You know, they get into the desert, they get disoriented, they get dehydrated, and the next thing you know, they pass away. And now, sometimes found months or even years later, skeletonized or whatever the case may be.
And maybe, there's a lot of people who have a lot of thoughts in this case. There's people even that say, hey, Ron, are they investigating the sheriff? Could he have something to do with her disappearance? I mean, I know that's a little bit outlandish, it's a little outlandish and it's a little bit far-fetched, but this is where people are going, Aaron, because of the flip-flops, the storytelling that he does and the way he changes things. I wanted to ask you quickly before we get into the recall. The city supervisor, Pima County Supervisor Matt Hines, he seems to be on board with the same basic gripes that you speak about. And this didn't happen. I just want to be clear to the audience. This didn't happen during the Nancy Guthrie case, folks. This has been alive and well in Pima County since this man took office. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarge.
That's correct.
Yeah. So prior to Sheriff Nanos coming into office, and I have all the stats. I mean, this board here is lit up with figures. And I don't want to bore people with this stuff, but it started when he took office, and it slowly affected the rank and file that have experience. You talk about homicide detectives, Sergeant, who had multiple years of experience, and because of this guy's ego or whatever you want to call it, you got 2-year wonders working it. And I'm not putting them down. You got 2-year wonders, meaning the guy might have 15 years on the job or 20, but he's only got 2 in the homicide. And guess what, folks? I have figures here. 76 homicides since 2020 in Pima County. That's it. I mean, 76 is way, one too many. One person is bad, but you guys don't have a lot of homicides in Pima County. Thank God.
Yeah, no.
But
yeah.
When it matters, experience and Ed, you could tell everybody here that's listening, repetitiveness, going through and processing scenes. If you don't do that on a regular basis and then you get a caper like this, you could really drop the ball. And that's when you said, I hope they did a good job on the inside, Sarge. That's the first thing me and Ed said. holy shit, they left a mat, excuse my French, they left a mat in front of her doorstep that this perp stepped on and could have put spit or dribbled onto. He had that mouth flashlight. The thing is still there, and it's got people going nuts. And I hate to get all hyped up here, but man, when I speak about this, this gets me, because I think about it. What if this was my mother? What if this was your mother? What if this was anybody else's family? You know, you wouldn't have the coverage on the news, but you damn sure would be flipping the freak out. Does the Guthrie family call up and ask for updates? Do you get phone calls from Annie and Savannah like, hey, Sergeant, what's going on with this case? Why is this? No? Yes?
If they're making calls, I imagine they're going straight to the sheriff, directly to the sheriff. They have a direct line. I would wager a large sum of money on it. So he's probably briefing them directly, or a senior commander is my guess.
Ed, go ahead.
Hey, Ron, you got to calm down here. Take a drink.
Yeah, thank you for the red Solo cup. So Matt, the supervisor, the Pima County supervisor, seems to be on board with this, and I want to play this little clip here. He also, early on, along when you first interviewed with Brian Enton, he discussed his disconcern for what Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos has been doing over the years. So let's take a listen to this, and we can all take a break for a second.
Matt Hines to help us walk through all of this. Matt, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with the fact that investigators are now looking closer at the security gate on the door. Have you heard anything about the FBI returning to the neighborhood?
I have not, and anything that could provide for useful information or a lead that returns Nancy to her loved ones or helps us figure out this mystery is of course, welcome news.
Matt, how has this been for the community? I have to believe everything that we've seen, we've heard, she was actively involved in church and in her community. The media attention, the unknown answers. How tough has this been?
Oh, it's a terrible tragedy, personal tragedy for the family, the Guthrie family, of course, but this entire community really has come together in solidarity and support of the family. And this really does touch really everybody in Pima County, and all of our hearts go out to the family. It's so frustrating that we're basically still almost at square one, it seems, in terms of any real leads here in the investigation. And I don't know that that's the authorities that are involved. I know we have 1,500 hardworking men and women of law enforcement doing everything that they can to help figure this out.
Matt, you talk about how you have 1,500 men and women doing everything they can to figure this out. Then let's turn to the growing frustration with the Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos. People seem to be really frustrated with him. Is it because this frustration has no place to go? He has been on the case since the beginning.
I think that's part of it. Look, I have had some concerns with leadership of the department for some time, and in particular, what I'm hearing most recently is that there's now been some reporting in a local paper here in Phoenix with the Arizona Republic that the sheriff misrepresented his work history, withheld a lot of disciplinary history that he had when he worked for El Paso Police Department before coming to Pima County to even get a job, and that kind of omission is a very serious thing to have when you're the head of a law enforcement agency like this.
Matt, we have some sound on that. Let's take a listen and chat about it on the other side.
If you were the guy, if you were that monster, you should be worried. You should let her go.
Hey, Sergeant Cross, everybody can still hear us, but we're not on the screen. Look at Brian Enton. This is our friend. He's a friend of mine, and I know he interviewed you several times. That was the interview right after Sheriff Nanos saw your interview with him. I got to put us back. that had to be the most uncomfortable thing. And I texted him about it, and he said, Ron, it really was. He put me in this small little chair on the other side of his desk, and all the other female and male reporters that interviewed him, he's always like facing them chair to chair. He's not sitting behind the desk. But Brian was saying that, like, wow, he said, you know, I really got a bone to pick with you, or I got something to talk to you about. And man, being inside this guy's office and looking at this picture, your thoughts about, look at the look on Brian's face. He's just like, oh man.
He's pointing a finger at him too.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Enton got a taste of the what we call the real Sheriff Chris Nanos that we experience inside the department. The persona he portrays in the media is not typically one that we get.
Yeah, and I froze that picture perfectly with him. Ed, you pointed it out with the pointing of the finger. But again, this report will go on, but I value your time more, and I want to talk with you more about this. Sheriff Nanos has this history from back when he first came into the Pima County Sheriff's Department. He had lied, or as he said, I watched an interview where he tried to walk this back. Sometimes you just forget things. Can you expand on that? And maybe why this is what Pima County residents should be upset about, in addition to Nancy Guthrie.
Yeah, it's a huge story, at least inside the department. Essentially, what happened was he was forced out of El Paso Police Department. His discipline jacket, should have precluded him from becoming a cop anywhere in the country. And what happened is in '82 he left El Paso. Essentially, he was suspended 8 times in 3 years. I think for a total of 37 days, which is insane. I've been on 26 years. I've never been suspended once for 1 day. So 8 times in 3 years. And then he was nearly indicted in the early 80s as the reports that I was able to find, because they made the newspapers, the El Paso newspapers, the reports, if they're to be believed, were something that a handcuffed suspect who may or may not have been related to a robbery, that's unclear, was clubbed in the head with a flashlight by a police officer, Chris Nanos, and he was suspended on the spot, relieved of duty, and then it went to grand jury. Let me remind the listening audience that was Texas in the early 80s. So I can't imagine how egregious that must have been to go to grand jury in the early 80s, to send a cop to grand jury. The grand jury did not indict, and I also understand that the suspect did not want to pursue charges. That was another clipping that I found. And so he received a 15-day suspension for that, as one of his suspensions. And then ultimately he was given a choice: either you resign or we're going to fire you. And he resigned. And so a couple years later, he popped up here in Tucson at the Pima County Sheriff's Department, applied as a corrections officer, and was let in, and then a little while later promoted to deputy. Now, I asked a very long time admin guy, former Chief Deputy Richard Castigar, I asked him, I said, when it broke, I said, how did he get hired? And he said, I have no idea, except for someone in personnel probably just didn't make a phone call to check the background. And the sheriff gave an interview, a radio interview a couple days ago, and he was asked about it. It was a friendly interview, but he was asked about it, and he, if I can characterize it correctly, said that he did a resume when he applied. And on resumes, you fluff up the good stuff. And I took that to mean as he omitted the bad stuff. But unfortunately, one of our personnel sergeants probably just didn't make a phone call to El Paso. I understand the chief of El Paso sent a letter over saying something to the effect of he was a good cop, but he needs to grow up a lot. But we just didn't get our hands on that discipline file. Had we gotten a hold of it, he would have never been certified as a police officer in Arizona.
And we're also to understand that he won the last election by like 400 and some odd votes. Correct me if I'm wrong.
481.
The residents of Pima County have to be really kicking themselves in the butt for voting because, look, he won by 481 votes. To me, it's just unbelievable that slipped through and that nobody caught that. Crazy as it stands. But at the end of the day, here we are, and he's in charge of this. Thank God he's not investigating anything, because we'd be really in big trouble if he was an investigator. He is an executive, and he makes command decisions, and those command decisions come back to bite you in the butt when cases like this drag on and on and on. We're in day 50, and just the fact that he chose that private lab over the FBI, who has, Ed can tell you, they throw the kitchen sink at everything. They have an unlimited amount of resources, unlimited amount of budget, budgets with personnel and so forth. Whereas a smaller department like this, again, it goes back to the Cajun Navy and EquiSearch. If you don't have to pay overtime for, 15 or 20 officers to go out and scour the desert, and you got a search group that's willing to do it for free, and you say no to it, there's something wrong. Something's very wrong here.
Now, can I ask this then, since we're on the DNA in the labs?
Yes.
Does the Arizona Department of Public Safety lab charge your agency to conduct forensic analysis of evidence?
I believe they do. How much is unknown to me.
Okay. And I don't believe the FBI in this case would have sent them a bill.
No.
Probably not.
If you gave them the evidence to do. I'm not knocking the other lab in Florida. Not knocking it at all. They have a good reputation. But okay, I'm just trying to think, taxpayer wise, is this something that is cost effective for the agency and the budget and so forth?
No, it was up to a couple $100,000. I think first week or two we were into this. So where it's at now is unknown to me. But yeah, it's a fair amount of money that we otherwise would not have had to pay if it went to the FBI labs. But that was the sheriff's decision. And I've heard good things about the lab in Florida, and we've used them for many years, to my understanding. It's just it's a hefty price tag
Right.
that the Pima County taxpayers now have to foot.
And that lab predated the sheriff.
To my understanding, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But the sheriff has the authority and command to say, hey, look, I know we're contracted by you guys, but the FBI's here and they're going to take over on this one. I'm sure that lab down in Florida would have not tried to buck, the sheriff and say, hey, no, you got to send it here. They're not going to do that. That's facts. So if he calmly and, described to him that he has a major caper on his hands and the FBI is on the ground here in Tucson and they want to take all of the, maybe he argued that he had sent one item. This was his argument. I remember it well. Well, we had already sent one item to them and then the FBI showed up. And now instead of having a break in continuity of where the evidence goes, it just all go over here instead of going down to Quantico. But that makes no sense either, because if you sent one piece or a small, it doesn't matter. Ed, correct me if I'm wrong. There would have been no harm or no foul with him sending the remainder of any evidence down to Quantico.
Yeah, because eventually, whatever that lab is doing in Florida, once a profile has been generated, it has to go to the FBI anyhow to be entered into CODIS.
Right.
Okay. So it was just an added step and time and money.
Yeah, it's crazy. Another thing that's got a lot of people really going nuts is that the sheriff had early on said that we cleared the entire family. He went on and gave that plea of like, leave these people alone. It was almost like he was defending the Guthrie family, like, hey, don't go after them. We've already cleared them. Meanwhile, the son-in-law's car was taken into custody. They didn't just take it and say, hey, would you sign this paper and say it's okay for me to take your car and download all the data from it? It's part of an investigation. You had to go and get a warrant to do that. You had to go before a judge and have probable cause to say, hey, we feel that we need to clear this because it's part of our checklist. We got to make sure that this is the last person who saw her alive. He transported her back to the house. So it might have been something as simple as that. And I'm not saying that that's what it was, but they had to go before a judge in Pima County and say, hey, we want a warrant for this.
Okay, he was interviewed. He made a statement. Now they got to validate the statement. The way they validate the statement is through the infotainment system and the information that's in his car about the time and routes he took from his place to his mother-in-law's place and back, right? So you corroborate all of that, and that's the way you do it.
Right. So circling back to Supervisor Hines, he seems to be on board with this recall, and maybe he didn't like the statement that the person who's running this recall made about how leadership is run in Pima County. That seemed to ruffle his feathers a little bit. But is he on board with the union? Are you guys working together and communicating? Are you guys friendly? And how successful do you feel that this recall will be? Because many people here in the chat want to know: is this something that's just a pipe dream, or is this something that could realistically happen?
Yeah, as far as the recall, the will is there in the community, certainly. It's the logistics. Politicians tend to not make it easy to recall themselves. So the process of a recall here in Arizona, at least in Pima County, is intentionally onerous. And for example, a signature page can take 10 signatures. It has to have the application for the recall attached to the back of it, and each individual page has to be notarized. So if you just want to do some quick back of the envelope math here, you need about 130,000 signatures just to be safe. I know you only need 122,000 and change to meet the standard, but you always want to go a little more, just because some signatures will be thrown out for whatever reason.
Yeah, they're going to be challenged.
Correct. And so if the bare minimum number of pages that will need to be notarized are 13,000 individual notarizations on these signature pages, it's incredible. Wow. And you only have 120 days from the time you file. So again, you need to average a little more than 1,000 signatures a day, every day, for those 120 days, and then submit them. So it is not as easy as it sounds. Like I said, the will is there. If we had enough time,
right?
I have no doubt we'd be able to collect enough signatures to do that. It's just the logistics are the sticking point of it. But they're giving it the old college try.
We hope and pray that you guys are successful in it, because I feel the residents, and not just only the residents, but the people, your men and women who are working in the Pima County Sheriff's Department, they deserve better. And it has to be awful. And I know you described to our audience, that you're answering a phone. You're a sergeant with 26 years and a lot of experience, and you are answering phones for broken water hoses and barking dogs and all kinds of bullshit like that. I mean,
that's correct.
To me, that's a tremendous waste of an experienced cop supervisor. You're not just a cop, you're a supervisor. To waste those resources is crazy. Speaking of that, we have retired Lieutenant Commander Joe Cardinale. He's going to be joining us. And I apologize to Joe because I didn't see him down there. We have double screens now, so it's like I had to scroll down, and now I see him. Joe Cardinale is joining us from, it looks like, a remote location. Joe, how are you, brother?
Good. How you guys doing tonight? Hey, Sarge, how you doing?
Hey, LT.
Good, Joe. How are you?
Not bad.
Yeah.
Good show. Very good show. Very informative.
We are discussing the recall of Sheriff Nanos. And at the same time, there's a lot of folks who are in the chat who have gone to the extreme, Lieutenant, to say that the FBI should investigate Sheriff Nanos. I heard Nancy Grace the other night, and I'm not a huge fan. I don't watch a lot of Nancy Grace, but I heard her say he goes out to the gym with his Camaro, his Corvette, his Chevy Corvette, and his $800,000, $50,000 home. So look, everybody's looking at this sheriff. Everybody's looking at everything that he's doing and the lack of what he's doing. Joe, you've supervised detective squads. We talked about this case many times, you and I, and also with Sergeant Cross. It's come to a boiling point because it's day 50, and we really don't have a lot to go with here. Now, when things are quiet, we know that things might be brewing in the background, but there's no information. And we talked about that too. No public information officer given anything. Your thoughts on that, retired Lieutenant Commander Joe?
I think it's great that the focus is now on Nanos, because that takes the heat off of the investigators to do what they have to do. And it also minimizes his micromanagement that he's been doing. And, you know, I really think they have stuff that they have to solidify, that they have to tie into. I heard you mention about cutting nobody, you know, that the family is no longer being looked at, which is the most ridiculous statement he could ever make. You never do that. You never do that, because they're the closest ones to the victim. You know, so you don't do that until you're 1,000% sure they have nothing to do with it. You have to investigate every avenue on this, as we have discussed in the past. And I have to weigh in on something here that Sergeant Cross just said about these signatures. All right, because I just got done doing. We're still in the process of doing the signatures out here on Long Island. In Suffolk County is, and as well as all of Long Island, because they have to be in soon. The problem that he has here is he needs a lot of signatures. And the only thing that solves that is boots on the ground, and it can be done. Now, you have to remember, they lost the first time with Gascon over in California, but they were successful the second time around with him and with somebody else, because the people are fed up. I think Pima County is going to be a lot more into this than Californians were. All right. So I really think a good effort should be made. Everybody should get some kind of boots on the ground to get this done. And Sarge, you really brought up a very good point there. They don't want to open up Pandora's box here for this recall, because then they're subject to the same thing moving forward. And people are going to request that and everything. But I don't think anybody has been as negligent as this sheriff when it comes to his own career. I couldn't believe the things you were saying with the suspensions and everything. Those red flags should have been all over the place for somebody not to take him on, because he is at that point a liability. And we've had people like that fall through the cracks, that leave the NYPD and go down south, and the agencies that down there at the time weren't doing good backgrounds, and they got on there, and then they call up and they go, well, how can you let this happen? We said, we put the red flags out there. It's on his folder. What did you pick up?
This guy's a sheriff, for crying out loud. It's
exactly.
Crazy. I have to ask, because I know we're getting close to the hour. The two search warrants that were conducted, the first one on February 10th to the 11th, that was the Rio Rico residence. A search warrant of a vehicle after a traffic stop of that, I believe, a package delivery guy. His name is Carlos Venezuela. These search warrants, and that was number one. And number two was Friday the 13th. That was the big FBI SWAT search warrant at the residence 2 miles from Nancy's home. Range Rover was taken into custody. Sergeant Cross, I have to ask you, and I know you may or may not have the answers to this, but I worked in fugitive enforcement, New York City Police Department. We did many, many search warrants. We conducted many search warrants, went before judges and swore them out in judges' chambers, some in open court. And we have to return those search warrants. We have to tell the judge in a timely fashion, what was the results? What was the fruit of that search warrant? And I have to ask you, on behalf of everyone watching and people who watch this replay, what happened with these search warrants, and why are they being sealed so nobody could see them?
Yeah, I wish I had a great answer for everyone. It's a mystery, honestly, for most of us inside the department. I know that the feds had a hand in them. How much and to what extent is a little unknown. And I believe even when I saw the video or some pictures of the second one, when they were out at the vehicle on the traffic stop away from the home, I believe the feds came out and took that over. So yeah, I wish I had an answer for your audience, but it's a mystery inside our agency as well, unless you're kind of in that inner circle of homicide. When they initially had it before the task force, I'm sure they know. But yeah, and like I said before, I've purposely stayed away from asking them any of these questions so I wouldn't risk, or jeopardize their career or mine. So I'm sorry.
So Sarge, also too, you mentioned on many different interviews that you did, that you don't have any, nobody talks in your department about this Nancy Guthrie case. You don't have anybody saying, hey, we're getting close here, or hey, it sounds like, so, things like none of that happens in a medium-sized police department as Pima County Sheriffs. Nobody's talking about this case, or nobody knows about it. I mean, we used to have to do some secret squirrel stuff to keep the cops in the precinct to not know that we were hitting the house down the block. That's a big drug spot. We would have to be really secretive about it, and sometimes it would get out. So nobody knows about anything that's going on with this case.
Yeah, I mean, there's some discussion from the investigators that were outside looking in, but the investigative team, the homicide team that had it before the task force, it's hard to describe to people who aren't inside the agency the level of just persistent, low fidelity fear that runs in the agency. And if you wrong these people, or if they perceive that you gave some information away, real or imagined, you will suffer. You will be transferred, and your career is over. Don't even think about applying to promote. So, yes, and it's him and his commanders, his handpicked commanders. They all practice in it, and so it's a career decision. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing that the homicide team kept this information quiet, but yeah, it makes it awkward too when you're around them. So if you're out somewhere at training or something, and there's a homicide guy, everybody's kind of like, oh, let's don't even ask them about it, because you don't want to risk jeopardizing yourself or them. But the culture in this agency it's a toxic brew.
Doesn't sound good at all. We had some divisions within the NYPD that were like that, but for the most part, all of the bosses, including Lieutenant Joe Cardinale, I worked around him, and I worked in the same areas that he worked, and he was a pleasure to work for. He was a cop's cop, and a good man. And you sound like the same type of sergeant. Would be a pleasure to work for you and under your command. So I want to go to the chat real quick. And before I do that, hashtag Sergeant SGT will make it easy. Hashtag SGT with your questions, because he is already committed to 15 or 20 minutes of questions. So we're going to get to that segment now. But Joe and Ed, if you have anything further you want to add, Ed, I'll go to you first and then over to Joe.
I'm good.
Okay, Joe, you got it, brother.
Okay, so very simple to answer your question before. So, Sarge, don't push it off that it's them doing it and, with the agency. You have a lot to do with this, all right? Because you going out there telling your members, don't get involved in this because you know what's going to happen. That's the good part about this. They respect you more than they respect them. So that's a very good thing. I'm sure they're speaking about this amongst themselves, and it would be a damn shame if one of these cops had something that was really fruitful for the investigation and they were afraid to bring it up because the higher ups are telling them, because that could come and bite them in the butt, later on. But Ron, I just want to say one thing about that search warrant you were talking about. We had search warrants like that. And when you have the, what you need to satisfy the need for the search warrant, you don't have to give that. It's good that it's sealed, because that means they're going to revisit that. All right. And they don't want the particulars out there because of that. So I think it's good that it's sealed. And I think that's a good sign that it's sealed and that they didn't return it. Oh, we have nothing with this. They had to present that in a manner that the judge says, okay, I agree with that. This is very important. So let's look at that direction for it later on.
100%. I'm going to do the right thing and let the questions cover me, and I'll have my guests and my co-hosts in the clear. So here's the first one coming from Sharon. And folks, let us know where you're watching. If you're watching from Arizona or the Tucson area, we particularly want to know about you, because we want you to vote. We want you to cast your vote in this recall. We need those signatures. So if you're in the Tucson area, we want to know. If you're particularly in Pima County, please let us know. So Sharon says, Sergeant, would you run this investigation differently? Just a generic open question.
Yeah, and you can answer that from whether the investigation was assigned to me or if I was in a position of leadership and this happened. And if it was assigned to me, I'm I had a little bit of time as a classic detective, certainly not a homicide detective, so I don't want to pretend that I have some homicide expertise or anything, but just basics of keeping the scene locked down. The biggest change that if I were the shot caller in this, would have been to essentially hand this over to the FBI and let their incredible forensic team go back in there. I feel like I would have had that scene locked down probably the whole week, because again, as I mentioned before, there's no reason to give it up. No one was waiting to go move back in and get into their own house. So preferably the scene would have continued to be secured, and then you'd bring in the FBI and let their incredible forensic team work it. And I feel like a lot of these, that would have given comfort to the public that this was being run appropriately. And also I think it would have been beneficial for the case. And I would have let the FBI handle this, just turn it over and let us move into a supporting role and posture, and we'll help them however we can. But they can dedicate all these massive amounts of resources to a case like this. I mean, this is a very odd case. I've never heard of anything quite like it, at least in my memory. So let the experts work it, especially, as I mentioned before, if we initially thought this was a hostage situation, if she was taken as a hostage, the FBI are the premier hostage group in the world. So why not let them run it? That's how I would have handled it, to answer your question directly.
Great. Here's another one. These are some of our snoopers. They're snoopalooping. Latest Nano salary showing $100,824 in 2024. That's a pretty low salary for a sheriff, in my opinion. I know my final annual salary, I'm not going to divulge it here, but you could look it up. It's available. Was well over that. So, and that was as a detective in the New York City Police Department. So people are looking. Here's another question. Hashtag Sergeant, can Nanos be removed from his position considering he lied under oath about his suspension from Texas? I believe we discussed this, but I'll give you a chance to, answer that out if you can.
Sure. So the most direct way of removing him, of course, is the recall effort. If not, you have to wait to take another bite at the apple in the next regular election. However, the item, from my understanding, that Supervisor Matt Hines has put on the agenda or the addendum for Tuesday's Board of Supervisors meeting is that there is a law on the books, apparently, where the Board of Supervisors in Arizona of any county can issue essentially kind of like a subpoena to a county official to have them come in and answer questions under oath. And if they fail to do so within 10 days or fail to meet that requirement, so I guess satisfactorily answer the questions, they have the ability apparently to remove them. So the problem is that Supervisor Hines is one person, and the rest of the board would have to agree to it. So if you're in Pima County listening to this, an email to your Board of Supervisor, to a quick email just to show support for Supervisor Hines's item to have the sheriff come in and finally answer for his background that's been hidden for over 40 years. That would be beneficial. That's how you could help.
Perfecto. Perfect. And if you're watching the replay and you're getting this message, please take action as it pertains to Sheriff Nanos. Here's another one from Liz Wagoner. She says, Sergeant, do you have a theory on what happened to Nancy?
Yes.
Can you expand on that?
No. As I mentioned before, my theory is nothing special. I'm just a person with an opinion based on what I know that you guys know. So of course, I have a theory, but at the risk of drawing the ire of Mr. Nanos, I will keep it to myself still.
All right.
Sorry.
Fair enough. So, people are saying a lot of different things in the chat. And, I know that we had this thing called ComStat. So ComStat would give all of the commanders in particular areas, it would be broken down into boroughs. But just to make it a little simpler, we would know who the recidivists were in particular areas. Like, I would hope that whoever's on this case would have taken into the Catalina foothills and looked at this crime stat that you shared with me, and that's publicly available, by the way, to anybody, and see that in 2020 there was 831 burglaries in the 5756 area code. That's in that particular area. In 2022, 921, for a total between 2020 and 2026 of 5,756 burglaries. Okay, take these 5,700 burglaries, and if there was arrests from them, bring those people in or go and interview them and interrogate them if need be. That's a lot of people in the chat are asking questions. Are investigators doing that? And I'd have to say, I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine that's what the task force is getting to. Like I described in someone else's interview, that I call this the grind part of the investigation. You know, most criminals are dumb and they make a lot of mistakes they're easily picked up on, and we solve them fairly quickly. But the ones that are at least somewhat careful, somewhat intelligent, it's going to require a little bit grinding through the investigation, combing through the evidence and what you have, waiting on forensics results to get a break, and then you can grab them. So I imagine at this point the forensic team the task force is coming through that stuff and looking through past calls, any burglaries in the area that kind of, maybe the MO matches a little bit, anything like that. I imagine they're doing their due diligence. They're pretty good investigators. So we have some quality guys that were sent over there.
Here's Kim from the Tucson, Pima County area. I voted against Nanos 3 times. Well, thank you, Kim.
Might be 4.
Might be 4. There you go. So again, here's another one. Hashtag Sergeant, can the family sue this sheriff for malfeasance for the Nancy Guthrie case? Good question.
I mean, you could sue anyone for anything. Whether or not it's going to be successful is an open question. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
You have to have standing, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can take anything to court and see if it gets thrown out. That'd be a question better suited for a lawyer to answer.
Here's a question that comes up a lot, and I know law enforcement really doesn't work with psychics or mediums, but it's directed directly to you, Sergeant Cross. Mm-hmm. Are you or your department working with mediums and psychics in this case?
If we are, I would be very surprised. No, and to my knowledge, we've never done that in any previous case.
Yeah, I would have to hit the oh hell no button.
Oh hell no!
I
trying to give a nice answer.
Yeah. So here's another one. It's a long one. It's covering up you and I together. So Sergeant, this comes from Planet Earth calling. Sergeant, why do you think it was leaked to the press that they were trying to detect Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker signal with the special device? That's that. What did they call that, Ed?
Oh, I forgot the name of the device, but that was the one that was up in the helicopter.
Right. Yeah, it was some type of special device that was looking for her ping. In my view, it was making the public. This public was not helpful. Making this public was not helpful. Thank you from France. So it's a viewer tuning in from France. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Was it the sheriff that leaked it?
He did put it out in an interview that they were utilizing that. So,
I don't know. Maybe because he was taking so much criticism for not doing anything and everything that he signal sniffer. That he felt it'd be helpful to show the public that we were trying everything. I'm not sure if that information should have been let out there. But maybe he was just kind of desperate to let the public know that we're trying anything and everything.
Yeah.
It's the best answer.
Here's a super chat from Kim. She says, thank you for staying with this story. She's thanking everybody on the board here in the panel. Thank you, Third Day, for becoming a channel member. And here's one from a sergeant. Sorry again, Aaron, that's covering part you and I.
That's okay.
Third Day fan sends in a $5 super chat and says, hi, Sergeant. I'm from Pinal County, or maybe Pima County. Do you have any information on Google searches found from IP addresses from Tucson concerning Savannah Guthrie / Nancy Guthrie? That was out there. The news was reporting on that.
Yeah, that's Pinal County, and they're directly to our north. So pretty familiar. I live near there. The IP addresses, I believe they were looking at it. That might have been related to the first search warrant with the guy that was pulled in Rio Rico, if I remember correctly, something to the effect that maybe he put in Miss Guthrie's address or something like that because he was a delivery driver. So I'm sure they're looking at it. I'm sure they're looking at IP addresses. I'm sure that was one of the first things they were doing, and also looking at cell phone towers for pings. I mean, I'm sure they went through all that stuff. So yes.
All right, here's another one from Jack Crane. When was the last time someone was abducted like this in the Tucson area? Good question.
Abducted? Not infrequently. It's difficult to answer because we have a lot of drug-related home invasions and kidnappings, a lot of them. I've personally recovered one on patrol that was a drug kidnapping. So we have a decent amount, but again, it's usually bad guy on bad guy. This type of thing is pretty rare. The last one, of course, that comes to mind is Isabella Solis, that poor little girl from many years ago that was taken out of her home. But he was captured, so he's rotting in prison where he belongs. But that's the last one that just springs to mind, and that was many years ago.
Yeah. Here's one from Aura Moon. She says, will Sergeant Cross be able to be taken off the desk if Nanos gets the boot?
Yes.
There you have it. There you have it. Here's one from Katina, who is another good friend of ours and a good friend of the show. She says, will the sheriff be investigated and possibly charged, fired, etc.? And who can successfully proceed with an investigation against this sheriff? Would that be the AG?
Yeah, I know that he was referred to the Attorney General's office after the last election for election interference. The board, the same board that is going to be discussing the sheriff Tuesday, they voted unanimously, to their credit, to refer what he did to his general election opponent, Heather Lappin, to the Attorney General's office. He put her on house arrest 3 weeks before the election and gave her a gag order and accused her of doing a bunch of things that, of course, she didn't do.
This keeps getting more interesting, right, gentlemen?
Yeah, this could be a 10-part series. And I have to tell the people that are listening, I really try, and I know it sounds like I'm really critical of the sheriff. I try to really pull back because I know that a lot of people will listen and go, it's just a disgruntled employee, just a disgruntled union guy. So it's hard to tell the truth without sounding like that. But I'm really trying to just give you the straight answers to the questions that I get. And so, yeah, the Attorney General's office, apparently they've had that case in front of them. What the status of that is unknown to me.
Yeah.
Hopefully it didn't get lost or something, but I haven't heard anything as a result of it. But again, the board, to their credit, voted unanimously, and it was 4 Democrats to 1 Republican board of supervisor makeup. So, it was bipartisan.
Wow. Here's another one from Aunt BB2, and this is complimentary to everybody here. And sorry again, it's covering Duty Ron. Ed, thank you for having Sergeant Cross on again. Sergeant Cross, thank you for giving up your time and telling us the truth. Some states do not have the option to recall elected officials. The folks in Pima I hope the folks in Pima don't blow this opportunity. Sheriff Jagaloon, that's one of our favorite terms here, needs to go. Absolutely. FBP2. Thank you for the super chat. Is it true? Here's one from Leah. She says, is it true that the sheriff lost the election in 2015 because he was being investigated for seized property / cash going missing from the department?
It is widely believed and likely by the sheriff himself. And that's, I think, why we still have that remaining animosity with the FBI on his part is they investigated him for misuse of RICO funds. Yes, I believe that made a lot of news in that during that race. And we believe that it had an impact and very likely led to the election of his opponent, Mark Napier.
Wow. Joe, Ed, and Sergeant Cross, we're almost done with the questions. I want to just give a break. Joe, do you have anything to add to?
Yeah, I want to ask Ed a question, and while the sergeant's here. Ed, with all those burglaries, what kind of a daunting task would it be that on all the car break-ins, and Sarge, I guess you could relate to this, all the minor break-ins with cars that actually do leave a lot of good prints and everything, that they make it SOP, all right, to go in there and take prints And the reason why I'm asking this is because you mentioned something that tickled my ears big time, Sarge, about you do have abductions drug related. We have so many unknowns in your county because you're so close to the border, and we have nothing on them. It'd be a great chance to get, prints and tie them into other cases. And then I'm just saying moving forward, I'm not saying it's going to do anything with this case right now, but moving forward, it'll be a great database for you guys. What do you think, Ed?
Oh yeah. There's you can create your own local database, but you're going to need funding for that and so forth, where you have like a database of prints lifted from unsolved burglaries. Okay. Or even solved burglaries. Okay. And then you just constantly keep comparing, because, these are recidivist crimes. Burglars commit burglary. Okay. And that's their MO. That's what they do. Robbers do robbery, so forth and so on. Bank robbers do bank robbery. So if you had those kind of databases of known burglars, known robbers, and known so forth, and you just, it's like the usual suspects. You keep, you pull them out and you look at them. Okay. And you see where they are at this point in time. Is he in jail? Is he in prison? Or are they out and active again? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm 100% on board with that, Lieutenant.
Sarge, here's another one for you from Princess Mitch and her husband, Rob. She's been a member for over 74 months here in this community. She says, thank you for all your service. She's a resident of Arizona. Will you stay in Pima County? Maricopa County can use a good man like you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's my honor to do this job. It's the best job in the world, in my opinion. It's an open question, trying to fight the good fight in Pima County. And who knows? I mean, our long-term plan, if it was up to me, if I could rub a lamp and get my wish, I'd move the family. We'd go to Idaho or something and live the rest of my days in retirement in peace and quiet. But duty calls and you never know what's going to happen in a couple years. I have 23 months left before I'm separate. I have to separate from the agency, and then we'll see what happens there. There's man plans and God laughs is usually what springs to mind. So we'll see what happens.
Amen to that. Here's another one from Try Not to Burn It. He or she says, Sergeant Cross, please tell us more about your incompetent sheriff.
We would need another hour.
That would probably need more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overtime. You'd be putting overtime stuff. Lieutenant would sign it.
Yes, sir.
Dawn Michelle says, I really like Sergeant Cross with a heart and a smiley face. Go ahead. LT, did you have something more further?
Yeah, because I'm still stuck on what you said before, because it's something that is, very important to me with those abductions that you're speaking about, that you spoke about. This is why you do not cut anybody loose from the investigation, because you never know who might have tie-ins with these drug dealers, with these cartels, and they owe something. And this could be just a message to somebody. This could be something that they hope would go in the direction of satisfying a debt or something. You don't know. That's why you do not cut anybody loose from an investigation until you're done and you have who you want in custody.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's any solace, the drug rips, and I've seen plenty of them, plenty of surveillance and ring footage of drug rips. They travel, usually it's 2 or 3 deep, and they are fast in the house. They're in and out in just minutes.
Not
So
40 minutes.
yeah, this guy had something else on his mind, and in my opinion, I don't want to let slip my, I still work for the agency, so I have to be careful in some of my answers. I hope the audience understands. But yeah, those drug rip or cartel related kidnappings are. You can look them up on YouTube and the internet and see for yourself. They have an entirely different MO. This guy had something else on his mind.
Yep.
Yeah. Here's a couple of final ones. This is from Ellington. Tammy says, thank you, Sergeant Cross. I would love you to be the sheriff. And
Thank you.
Here's another one. Cross for president. Holy.
Let's simmer down now.
Just calm down.
A lot of people checking in where they're watching from. There's the great state of Texas. Hashtag Heavy Hook says, bring Nancy home. Amen. This is about Nancy Guthrie and her family. Now, the family has put out a statement acknowledging the harsh reality of that their mom is not going to be coming home. And they wanted to, in their own words, bring her home to lay her to rest. And that makes this so sad, because we've been talking about this case for 50 days now, right? But as law enforcement professionals, we know how the statistics go, and how as time goes by, the hope for bringing Nancy home alive and well to her family that ship has long sailed. And there's always a miracle that I always hope and pray for. But at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, is that we work for the family of the victim, and the victim here being Nancy Guthrie, along with her entire family. And then you can extend that out to the very frightened senior citizens who live in the Catalina foothills. They're scared shitless. And that's a fact. We heard reports from local stations and from News Nation interviewing some of these seniors at these local little cafes where they come and sit in the morning and they drink their coffee. And they're all like, well, we leave our doors open. We leave the windows open to get some breeze coming in from off the desert. And we like to keep our doors open, but now we don't do that. So it just goes to show you that prior to Nancy Guthrie going missing, doors are left open commonly in the Catalina foothills. It's clear and apparent. Sarge, you have to, acknowledge that, this is a situation that in a community like this, they're not used to. Look, we've 76 murders in all of Pima County for 6 years. That's nothing. It's a relatively safe place. So yeah. I want to say thank you to you, first and foremost, Sergeant Cross, for staying an extra 21 minutes. We promised you an hour. Here's another super chat. Everyone's trying to get stuff in at the last second. Sergeant Cross, do you think the ransom letters were fake from Florida? I can answer that. Yeah.
Yes.
My
opinion. Yes.
Opportunistic. Yes.
Joe?
Yep. Absolutely. Especially when they got the first collar. So,
yeah, people from outside the country, just, how you get your phone calls about your car warranty expiring and that Microsoft is being renewed, or it's just those same kind of people. I'm not saying.
The phone call from Mumbai about my Social Security.
Right. So thank you for the super chat. Thank you to everybody. Listen, I couldn't get to all the questions, but I think we did a darn good job of peppering Sergeant with the questions. Here's one last one. I'll jump in with this. Have you listened to Nano's local radio interview, and do you have any insights? If so, I haven't heard it. Have you?
Yes. I suffered through it. Listened to it. He was on with a local reporter and a local radio show personality down here. Again, it was a friendly interview, but he was asked some pointed questions, and one of the questions that he was asked was what kind of his future plans were politically. And like most politicos, he didn't answer it directly, but he made it seem as though he wasn't ready to turn over the agency to anyone else yet. So wow. The takeaway was that he sure sounds like he's digging in and is probably going to run again.
Stubborn. I have words like big ego, spiteful, micromanager. There's some I can't say. People sent into us. I have pages and pages of stuff here. If I turn my second camera on, you just laugh. But you have to work with this, obviously for this guy. People are asking, who does the sheriff answer to? And that's a good question, because some people don't know. And I'm going to ask that for one of our viewers, and many of viewers have redundantly asked that question. Who does this man, Sheriff Nanos, answer to?
Only the voters of Pima County. They're his boss, and unfortunately, they only get a say-so every 4 years to judge on his performance. That he's halfway through, and they'll have a chance to weigh in a couple years if this recall effort falls short, or if he just decides to resign. The beneficial thing is if he resigned now, we would have enough time to have a special election, which would be a benefit to the voters of Pima County because they could actually weigh in on candidates and knowing the full measure of them and all their background. Next time he's up, if he decides to stick around and run again, they're going to know his entire background this time, and they're going to be able to judge him based on his performance in this case. And so, we'll see what happens, but that's who he answers to are the voters and really no one else.
Yeah. I want to thank Sergeant Aaron Cross for spending his time with us. And I know that I'll ask you this question I asked it the last time. Will you come back again sometime soon and visit the Crime Time with Duty Ron and Ed Wallace community?
Oh, yes, sir. I have to say before we go that this is my mother's favorite podcast that I appear on. And so I'm certain she's watching. And yes. And I'm sure she's laughing right now watching.
Yeah, and one final thing, and I keep doing this because I just glanced over. There was reports recently that there was a additional, you and I talked about this on our last stream with Joe Cardinale. Was there an additional vote of no confidence for Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, or was I imagining that?
No, that is correct, and we're going to announce it tomorrow morning, so I can kind of give you the inside scoop, I guess, tonight. We took a vote, an additional vote. The last one was in 2024, so it'd been a few years, and particularly we did it in light of the recent revelations of his background. And I got a lot of angry calls from the members, and I figured it'd be a good time to take another vote. And so we're much bigger now than we were in 2024. We now represent over 300 members of the 395, I think, total commission. So we took a vote and it returned unanimous. Last time it was, I think, 98%. This one was unanimous. It was not only no confidence, but it was no confidence and a call for him to resign. So we will be announcing that on our Facebook page and X page tomorrow morning and sending those letters over to the Board of Supervisors. But a large majority of his own deputies are now saying with one voice that they have no confidence and are telling him that he should resign.
That is telling. And Lieutenant Joe Cardinale shaking his head the entire time. When you have something like that happen and you pool your membership and you get that overwhelming response, there's something wrong and there's something not right in Pima County. And there's no questioning it. And this, ladies and gentlemen, did not happen during the Nancy Guthrie investigation. This has been ongoing, active and ongoing since he took office. So, yeah, I want to go to my guests as well, Joe Cardinale, for final words, and then I'll go over to Ed and then to Sergeant Cross.
Thank you. Two quick things. Mrs. Cross, you raised a good man there. You should be very proud of him. I know you are, because we are. And number two, I don't think he's going to resign unless he gets political pressure to do so, and a lot of political pressure, because his ego won't let him do it unless he gets that political pressure.
Amen, brother. And I concur. Ed, over to you.
All right, folks, I want to thank you for spending over an hour and a half with us today. I know your time is valuable, and you can get your true crime fix anywhere you like on the internet. And as you know, we got a raving endorsement from Sergeant Cross's mom. So thank you, Mom, for that and your support. And please stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your six.
And before I go over to Sergeant Cross, I want to just say, hey, we, again, send strength, prayers, and positive vibes to the Guthrie family, to all of the citizens and the folks on the ground in Pima County, the investigators, the district attorney's office, the folks who are volunteers for Pima County sheriffs. We want everyone to stay safe and get to the bottom of what happened to Nancy Guthrie. So again, strength, prayers, and positive vibes to everyone involved in this case. Over to you, Sarge, for final.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate being welcome back onto your show. And really, this message is for the people that live in Pima County and the department members who may be watching, that we're going through a tough time right now. But, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We'll get through this just like we did everything else. And, at this point, the only way out is through. And so we'll keep plugging along. And if you live in Pima County and you want to help out with the recall effort, look up Mr. Daniel Boudieres on Facebook and volunteer. Every little bit helps. It's a Herculean task, but you eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Amen to that. And I'm going to link that in the description once I get that official link. If there's a link that's available, I'll link it in the description here. Thank you to the replay viewers, the moderators, the super chatters, and all of the folks who positively engage in this community. And Mama Cross, we love you and thank you for watching us. And it's always great to see and have your son on. Like Joe said, you raised a good man. And, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out. Ed, the hat.
The hat.
I love the cowboy hat.
I got this from the Texas Rangers. Just one.
Okay. Good night from New York and good night from Pima County, Arizona. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Sarge. Good night.
Yes, sir.